Since I'm shooting film, I have received three questions over and over again. The first one being, how do I scan my images? The second one, how do I develop my images? And the third one, how do I expose my images? In this video today, I will focus on the first. How do I scan and eventually edit my images? The shoots you see here are two different shoots on two different days, one with Ines and one with Runa. These were not organized by me, they were organized by my wife Stephanie, who does professionally shoots for models' portfolios. So quite regularly we have models coming in and Stephanie takes then some pictures of them. If I have time, like here, I try to take some pictures as well. And here I used them now to demonstrate how I will scan and edit the images. It was a very dark day here in Belgium. It was rainy, overcast, stormy, and most of the time there was not enough light coming through the windows to shoot available light. So we had to use artificial light, which I'm not so experienced in, I don't like so much. But you will see the difference in the images between artificial light and available light, and also the difference it makes in the scans. I used different formats for both shoots. So every day I was using a 4x5, the Chamonix, with the 135mm lens. On the first day I used the Mamiya RZ with a 110mm lens. And the second day I used the Hasselblad 501 with an 80mm lens. 35mm on the first day was a Nikon FM2, and on the second day was a Leica M3, both with 50mm lenses, so you can see the difference of the different formats as well. I changed my scanning process a couple of months ago. I used to scan on an Epson V750 and on a Nikon Coolscan 9000. They were excellent. I used them for more than 10 years. But then I started trying camera scanning, and I started scanning with the Hasselblad X1D2 and the macro lens from Pentax by an adapter, the setup you see here. And I've never gone back to scanning with the Epson or the Nikon. It's just so much faster and more efficient. And I can scan many more images in a fraction of the time frame that I needed with the Epson and the Nikon. And the quality is at least on the same level. When scanning 4x5, I actually take 4 different pictures of each negative and then stitch them together in Lightroom, resulting in a quite significant file with lots of resolution. 8x10 I do in a similar way, but I use 6 pictures. I'm using a light table from Kaiser that works quite well. I don't yet have any dedicated holders for 4x5 or 8x10, but so far I'm quite happy with how it works. Now I'm scanning the 120 film. Again, I don't have any fancy holder. It's a pixelator, which works okay. I'm sure there are better solutions out there. Negative Supply or Valoy, if you see this, don't hesitate to send me something to test. I'll be happy to. Scanning a 6x6 frame or 6x7 with the Nikon would have taken a much longer time. I would say at least 1.5 to 2 minutes per frame in a decent resolution. And then after 3 images, you would have to change them. And it was a much longer process. While here, a whole roll of film, you get scanned in, I don't know, 5 minutes maximum. And then you upload the images into Lightroom, use Negative Lab, and convert them there. So it's a much, much faster process. Now we're in Lightroom. I have imported all the images. And then after making sure they're upright, I'm using the panorama function to put them back together into these 4x5 negatives. The video is sped up a little bit. So normally it's a little bit slower. But on my Mac Mini, it takes about maybe a minute to have the merged file ready. The beauty of this process is, of course, that if you needed really a high resolution image, you could subdivide the 4x5 or 8x10 and even more sub images, and then stitch together maybe 8 images or 12 images. And then you come up with really fantastic resolutions that you can use for big prints or really getting the best quality out of the images. After stitching together all the 4x5s, I'm cropping them down to the negative border and then using Negative Lab Pro for the conversion. The software offers lots of different options and presets, and I don't really have a favorite one or an approach. I'll just use and try and see which one works best. Adapt the sliders to sort of get in the right area where I want to be. I will always edit the pictures in Photoshop later. So that's where I do the fine-grained contrast control. So here in this conversion process, I try to make sure that I have all the tones from the dark shadows to the bright highlights to have as much information as possible to work with. My observation from scanning using different scanners is that they don't really matter. What matters is the photo that you take, the light that you have when you take this picture, that you expose your film properly, that you have all the highlights and all the shadows and they're properly reflected in your negative. And then the scanning is just a minor process in order to capture that, bring that in the computer. But the important thing is when you actually take the pictures. All the rest is just a little flavor or a little bit more resolution. So now we're actually in Photoshop. With black and white images that I scan myself, I normally open them all in Photoshop just because they often have lots of dust spots that you need to clone out. And I find Photoshop much more efficient for that than Lightroom. So what I do almost on all images is basically just the curves correction to fine tune the contrast and get that dialed in. And then one layer where I'm basically, cloning out any dust spots or anything that's unwanted. In this one, you see I added a little vignette to make the edges and the corners a bit darker. But all the edits I do are very, very subtle. Often when I see the images in Lightroom, I don't know which is the edited image and which was the scan. Often it's really just minute changes in order to fine tune. This is a comparison between a Epson scan and a drum scan. So you see two images. The one on the left is the Epson, that's this one. And then on the right is the drum scan, this one. And obviously, if you zoom in, if you look in detail, you will see the difference. But I'm pretty sure you have to print pretty large in order to make that noticeable in a final print. And we're comparing here a scan with a stock 4x5 mask on the Epson and a high-end drum scanner. So the difference is pretty small and insignificant for the difference in cost.